found some big secrets everybody missed in Poppy Playtime that solves the entire story. And after countless hours of research and gameplay, today I've discovered the truth behind the Bigger Bodies initiative, some dark secrets the player is hiding from us, and even how the entire game will end. This video will change the way you look at Poppy Playtime forever. So to set the timeline, back in January of this year, Chapter 3 released to the public with hundreds of lore clues and secrets about the factory and all of the monsters inside of it. But more importantly, they also revealed a bunch about the player. Early in the game, after entering Home Sweet Home, we famously inhale Catnap's red sleeping gas and begin to hallucinate and dream things from when we used to work in the factory, such as old radio recordings and employee orientation tapes from Playtime Co, concluding with Huggy Wuggy maniacally escaping through a TV screen and jump scaring us, ending the nightmare. However, what makes this scene most interesting outside of the overdramatic Huggy chase is that throughout the entire dream, there are a ton of clues alluding to the player feeling guilty about something we had done in our past at the factory. Like, for one, there's writing on the floor saying things like guilt haunts you and nowhere is more haunted than the mind. There's a radio tape near the end that, when played in reverse, shames us for missing the hour of joy in 1995.
You were supposed to be here. Why weren't you here? You missed the event. You have no right to be here.
And throughout the halls, we even get to see the player's former office with the accompanying guilt haunts you text over our old desk. So we already know the player is guilty about something, but what could that something be? Well, thankfully, the answer is given to us pretty easily. As for one, while we don't know the player's role in Playtime Co when they used to work there, we can assume they were pretty high up in the company. Since looking back at our office from the dream sequence, we had our own room to ourselves, while in other parts of the factory, we could see they shoved desks around wherever they could fit them, reserving the big offices for important people. Furthermore, on multiple occasions, we are actually recognized by both Mommy Longlegs in the game station and Miss Delight in Playcare on other sides of the factory.
But you worked here.
Wait, I recognize you. You used to work here.
Which again suggests the player was a well-known higher-up in the company, even backed up by the unnamed slide in Chapter 2 theorized to be hours before the factory closed. And so therefore, with us being one of the top employees, it's likely we had something to do with the creation of all of the monsters in Playtime Co, and this guilt we're feeling from the dreams is us feeling bad about it years later, simple enough. But while we could stop it there, I want to go even deeper with the player's role in the factory. Because going back to the hallucination, throughout the nightmare sequence, we also hear a bunch of radio tapes reporting that a young boy was found outside of the estate of Elliot Ludwig with different body parts missing, likely to create the bigger body, since we know from Catnap's creation document they used real human parts to make these toys. But then this brings up the question, if we were one of the employees responsible for creating all of these monsters, why did we remember this young boy's report specifically all these years later in our dream and none of the thousands of others we might have worked on? Well, I think it's because we might have had a special connection with this young boy in particular. Since after again progressing through the entire dream and making it over to the ending VHS tape, a big Huggy comes out of the screen and attacks us seemingly for no reason. And on the surface, most people, myself included, wrote this off as the player being traumatized from the old Huggy vent chase in Chapter 1. They even line up one-to-one in animation. But then why didn't we ever relive the Mommy Longlegs chase or the PJ Pugapillar chase or anything throughout the entire game? What made our encounter with Huggy so important for us to remember it above them all? Well, I think it's because the player was actively involved and connected with the creation of Huggy Wuggy specifically. Remember that radio tape of the child who they specifically recount as being a young boy? I believe that lost young boy was the child who would eventually be extracted and turned into Huggy by us, the player. And this entire dream sequence with the missing children's report, the Huggy coming out of the screen, and the guilty writing on the walls is the player reliving the trauma that was having to create Huggy. But to support this theory even more, in the last room with the VHS tape, the atmosphere of our dream suddenly shifts, with the theme going from the endless walls of Home Sweet Home to suddenly a small science type room with eye washers, beakers, science books, and curtained-off beds usually used in hospitals to separate multiple patients in one room. All of which are items not seen in Home Sweet Home until later in the game, meaning this room is a memory of our past and is likely where we were performing on these toys during our time in the factory. And wouldn't you know it, they made sure to leave a super out-of-place Huggy Wuggy cardboard cutout right by the TV, so we know this was who we operated on. But let's say you still don't believe me. The smoking gun of this theory that makes it undeniable is back in 2023, we were given a series of Chapter 3 VHS tapes teasing the third game early. A Kissy tape that teased the Hour of Joy, a Braun tape that teased the Bigger Bodies Initiative and Thomas Clark, and then there's this mysterious one, Restricted Disappearance, that showcases the Bigger Body Huggy escaping the factory and going on a rampage, killing multiple employees in the process for seemingly no reason. And at first glance, this tape seems completely meaningless to Chapter 3's story. That is, until you go into the final scene, where for a few frames at the end of the tape, we can actually see one more shot of Huggy Wuggy standing outside of a mysterious house a few seconds before he was caught, and this shot explains everything. Because, again, going back to the radio tapes, they told us the young boy's body was found on the estate of the late Elliot Ludwig. No, they don't explain which of Elliot's estates they mean here, whether they mean the factory or his actual home. But later in the radio tapes, they interview former neighbors of Elliot, so it's safe to assume they meant his personal residence. And this matters because it explains that the actual reason Huggy escaped the factory in this tape was to revisit the place his former body was found before being extracted. Proven by the mysterious house we see him standing still around, likely being the former home of Elliot Ludwig, the same one where his old body was originally found. Confirming that the young boy in question is in fact Huggy and that the player is responsible for his creation. So overall, this all tells us that the player was guilty for his creation of the monsters, especially Huggy Wuggy. And so therefore, it seems like our true purpose with re-entering the factory 10 years after closure was to try and cleanse this guilt we were feeling for creating all of these toys and wanting to find out what happened to all of the children we left there. But then this brings up an extremely important question. How? How will the player repent for all of the things we did to the monsters after years of the factory being abandoned? And oh boy, the answer is much darker than you could have ever imagined. You see, throughout Chapter 3, we are told by Poppy our goal is to ultimately get revenge on the monsters who have been attacking us throughout the game.
I need you so we can get revenge on those monsters who've tortured you, who've tortured us.
While Ali has also told us that we still have the chance to save a lot of people, including ourselves.
Together, we can save a lot of people, including you.
What do Poppy and Ali mean by this? How can we stop all of the monsters while also still saving a lot of people after they were all turned into monsters or died in the Hour of Joy? And how can we save ourselves? Well, the answer actually lies in Chapter 3's death screen. See, sometimes when we die, we will get a mysterious message from an unidentified individual followed by the words, "Get up." Now, while many people have theorized on who is talking to us in these screens, including Game Theory, who thinks these messages are partially coming from the prototype, I heavily disagree. Because you might have already noticed if you played the game, but these death messages only appear when dying to an external entity. They don't show up if you die by falling, getting crushed, or running off the map, only when killed specifically by one of the monsters, leading me to believe that these death messages are actually from the toys attacking us in the factory, proven by them saying things like, "Bow to the prototype, isn't he wonderful," since the toys worship the prototype who saved them, and "Innovation is key, we are reborn anew," referencing how the toys were reborn as a product of Playtime Co's creation, basically confirming this theory. But the toys also tell us some darker things as well. We need revenge. Don't be selfish. Nobody is here by choice. There are fates worse than death, referencing how they were forced into immortal toys out of their will. These messages sound like all the toys were actually unhappy with their lives and were almost calling upon us to save them from their torment. Hence them saying, "Get up" at the end of nearly every message before we promptly get revived. I believe these messages are the souls of the toys telling us to not quit and to continue continue with our mission exploring through the factory. They even confirm this in the official Chapter 3 song by CG5 called Sleep Well, whose lyrics represent the toys reflecting on being under control of the prototype after the hour of joy, saying, "We just wanted to heal, but now our nightmares are real, and we want freedom." So clearly the toys were all completely miserable in their lives, and like Poppy and Ollie, they were relying on us to save the factory. And they give us a pretty good idea of how in some of the darker Chapter 3 death screens. "We are going to miss our window. Get up. This research must stay buried. Nobody may leave. Burn this place to the ground." And this last message changes everything about the way the game works. Our goal with re-entering the factory isn't to come in here and save all of the toys from their torment. It's not possible. The factory is in ruins. All of the children are permanently turned into the bigger bodies with no way to escape and no way to be a part of regular society. The employees are long gone and eaten with no way to bring any of them back. How do we cleanse our sins? How do we get revenge on the monsters? The answer lies in this message right here. Burn this place to the ground. This is our goal, and this is how the game will end. Don't believe me? While one of the biggest mysteries in Chapter 3 I haven't seen many people talk about lies in the gas production zone where the red gas was being created. See, at the beginning of the game, Ollie tells us we need to move all the red gas from the right and direct it to the left. And then we spend the rest of the game trying to restore the power into the gas producer, where at the end we successfully move it to the left. But they never explain or tell us why we do this. Not in any VHS tapes, not from Poppy, Ollie, or anybody, so why? Well, if we follow the gas pipes after shifting it left, we can see it's going downward towards where we go at the end of the chapter, suggesting we are sending the red smoke deeper into the factory with us. But there's a very particular purpose for this gas and why we moved it. See, we obviously already know the red smoke has sleeping properties. That's why it was originally created in the first place as a sleeping agent in Home Sweet Home. However, if we look towards the final encounter with Catnap, after beating his boss fight and finally electrocuting him, we can see at first he is shocked by the green hand, before in defense spitting the red gas all around his face, which causes him to catch on fire. The red gas is flammable, and this small detail right here changes everything. The reason we move the red gas into the left is because we are moving down the shaft in order to burn the entire factory down from the bottom up, using the flammable red gas to spread it around. This perfectly solves our questions. How will we save everyone in the factory, and how will we save ourselves? By burning the entire place to the ground, removing all evidence of it ever existing, freeing all of the children from their long-lasting torment that is being turned into the gross, vicious toys, and finally free our conscience as the player, getting to completely remove the factory from existence and allow us to finally put it in the past. This also explains how in the Chapter 3 ARG, Theodore, before he became Catnap, accidentally burned himself with the green GrabPack hand, as he tried to escape Playtime Co during the nighttime when the red gas was being spit throughout the area, causing his electric hand to catch fire the same way it did in Catnap's ending. This is 100% the way Poppy Playtime is going to end. There's just too much evidence. We didn't return to the factory to save all of the toys and everything inside of it like some kind of fairy tale. We returned to cleanse our guilt by leaving the entire building in ashes, where our guilty conscience and all of the dark things Playtime Co did will be left among the shadows forever.